thought I was giving her the world. After 30 years of blood, sweat, and sacrifice, I handed my daughter the keys to the business I built from nothing. It was my legacy, a cozy but successful chain of boutique cafes that started in my tiny kitchen and grew into something people across the state recognized. I had dreams of retirement, of finally putting my feet up, watching my grandkids grow up, maybe traveling. I trusted her to carry it on, and I believed her when she said, "Mom, I'll protect it like you always did." What I didn't account for was her husband. Marcus was always polite, too polite, now that I think about it. He smiled with his teeth but not with his eyes. He said all the right things, called me Ma, with a chuckle, and played the perfect son-in-law. I ignored the way he constantly asked about sales numbers, suppliers, trademarks. I brushed off his fascination with our payroll software and contracts. I thought he was just being supportive. In reality, he was laying the groundwork. I didn't see it until it was almost too late. The betrayal hit me like a freight train, fast and unforgiving. It started with a late-night call from Sophia, my assistant manager at our flagship location. "Ms. Elaine?" I didn't know who else to call. Marcus came in today and started issuing orders like he was the boss. He even brought in some outside consultant, said they were streamlining operations, said it came from your daughter. I laughed at first. "No, that's impossible," I told her. "He's not even on payroll." But something gnawed at me, a twist in my gut I hadn't felt in years. I called my daughter that night. She didn't answer. The next morning I showed up at the main office unannounced. And that's when I saw the first crack in the mask. There they were. Marcus, sitting at my old desk like he owned it, my daughter beside him, not meeting my eyes. Legal papers stacked neatly on the table, folders labeled with things like asset, consolidation, and licensing transfers. My heart dropped. "What the hell is going on?" I demanded. Marcus didn't flinch. "Just making improvements, Ma," he said smoothly. Sophie and I agreed this place needed a little modernization. I turned to my daughter, waiting for her to say something, to laugh, to tell me this was all some weird misunderstanding. But she just looked down at her lap. That silence hurt more than anything. "You told me I was ready," she said quietly. "You said I could handle it." "Handle it, yes, not hand it over to him." That's when he leaned back, smug as anything. "Elaine, you retired. This is the future now. We've got plans." Retired? I hadn't retired. I had transitioned the business. The LLC was still under my family trust. Yes, I gave Sophia managerial control, but I didn't sign it away. Not yet, anyway. And that's when I realized what this was. Not a misunderstanding. Not a business disagreement. This was a takeover. A hostile one. And my daughter, my only child, was letting him do it. No. Worse. She was helping him. That night, I sat alone at home, staring at the old business registration files, the decades of contracts and receipts I'd kept, every signature I ever wrote to build this dream. I felt like a fool, like I'd handed over my heart just to have it ripped out. But one thing about me, I didn't survive the early years of building a business in a man's world by rolling over and letting snakes run the show. If they thought they could steal what I built, what I bled for, they had another thing coming. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. In the days that followed, the truth unraveled like a loose thread on a sweater. Pull one, and everything starts to come apart. I started digging, quietly, methodically. I went through the files Marcus had left in my office, accessed the admin accounts I still had rights to, and reviewed every change they'd made since I'd retired. What I found made my stomach turn. Marcus had set up a new company, Future Brew Enterprises, LLC, just 3 weeks earlier. He was in the process of transferring supplier contracts, client lists, even employee agreements from my cafes to this new shell company. And worst of all, my daughter had signed off on most of it. Piece by piece, he was gutting the business and rebuilding it under his name. This wasn't modernization. This was theft. They were preparing to phase out the Elaine's Cafe brand altogether, replacing it with some sterile modern monstrosity called grind theory. The charming, homey look I'd spent decades curating was being erased. The family recipes? Gone. He even told staff that the signature cinnamon rolls, my mother's recipe, were outdated. I confronted Sophia again, this time in person. She looked like she'd aged 5 years in a week. "They've been forcing everyone to sign new contracts," she said, wringing her hands. "Half the staff quit. The others are scared they'll lose their jobs." "What about the books?" I asked. "Are they cooking them?" She hesitated. Then she pulled out her phone and showed me the new accounting dashboard Marcus had implemented. On the surface, it looked clean. But when you dug in, there were massive discrepancies. Inventory listed under 2 different company names, strange consulting fees being funneled to Marcus's personal accounts, and inflated expenses that didn't match any real invoices. They weren't just taking the business. They were bleeding it dry while setting themselves up as the new saviors. The emotional toll was heavier than I expected. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat. Every memory I had of building this place with my bare hands, waking up at 4 a.m. to bake, hauling equipment in the snow, training teenagers who became family, was being stolen and scrubbed clean by a man who had never worked a day in hospitality. And my daughter? She wasn't just standing by. She was helping. I tried to talk to her again. I called. I texted. I showed up at her house. She wouldn't answer the door. Finally, I cornered her in the parking lot outside one of the cafes. "Sophie, you have to stop this. You're letting him ruin everything." She looked at me with cold, tired eyes I didn't recognize. "I'm doing what's best for the future, Mom. You wouldn't understand." "What's best?" "You think letting that man take everything I built is what's best." She crossed her arms. "You always said I wasn't ready. Marcus believes in me. He trusts me. He's using you," I said, my voice shaking. "You can't see it now, but when he's done bleeding you dry, he'll move on and leave you with nothing." Her lip trembled. For a second I thought, I got through. But then she looked away and said, "You don't know him like I do." I walked away that day knowing one thing for certain: she was too far gone. But I wasn't. I knew the business. I knew the numbers, the contracts, the suppliers. I had connections and I had history, and I still had time. Barely. To fix this before they pulled the final trigger. The betrayal stung like hell, but it woke up a part of me I'd let sleep too long. The fighter. The woman who built something from nothing. The woman who didn't give up just because someone tried to take what was hers. If Marcus wanted a war, he was about to get one. And this time, I wouldn't be quiet about it. It wasn't just about me anymore. That's what hit the hardest. This business wasn't just some retirement project or vanity brand. It was the lifeline for dozens of people. Baristas, bakers, single moms, college kids paying their way through school, managers who'd been with me for over a decade, real people with real families, depending on this business not just for a paycheck, but for stability, for community. And Marcus was dismantling it like it was a game of Monopoly. I couldn't stand by and let that happen. I walked through one of our oldest locations, our very first cafe on Maple Street, and felt a lump rise in my throat. The place smelled different. The staff had changed. The energy was cold. My favorite corner table, the one where I used to do inventory every Sunday, was gone, replaced with some generic modern furniture that looked like it belonged in a tech startup, not a cozy cafe. And behind the counter stood Jenna, a young woman who started working for me 2 years ago after fleeing an abusive relationship. This job had been her reset button. She saw me and rushed over. "Elaine, I didn't know you were coming by. Are you okay?" I nodded, forcing a smile. Trying to be. She bit her lip. "Marcus said we might be closing soon. Said the whole brand is being reimagined. He offered us roles with the new company, but the contracts are weird. I haven't signed yet." That's when it became clear. It wasn't just about the cinnamon rolls or the name on the sign. This was about control, about legacy, about the soul of what I had built. And if I didn't stop it, Elaine's Cafe would be nothing more than a forgotten name buried in a corporate rebrand, with all the humanity and heart sucked out of it. And Sophie? She might think Marcus was giving her power, but she didn't understand what she was signing away. She wasn't becoming a boss. She was becoming a pawn. The more I looked at it, the more I realized that he had been playing the long game from the beginning. Marrying into the family, learning the business, waiting for me to hand over the reins. I don't think he ever loved her. Not really. She was just his ticket to something he couldn't build himself. I started having conversations, quiet ones, with my longest-standing employees, the ones who still trusted me. Many were scared but loyal. Some had already been squeezed out. A few, like Sophia, were willing to help me dig. Because this wasn't just a family matter anymore. This was sabotage. It was fraud. And it was about to hurt a lot more people than just me. I even heard from a supplier I'd worked with for 15 years. He called me directly. "Elaine, I'm concerned. Marcus said the billing address was changing and asked me to sign a new vendor agreement with Future Brew. Something felt off. Is everything okay?" I wanted to cry. "No," I said. "Everything is not okay." That call confirmed what I suspected. Marcus was trying to transfer as many assets and agreements as possible before I caught wind. And if those contracts were finalized under his new company, I'd lose everything: brand equity, vendor relationships, even proprietary recipes. All of it. But here's the thing Marcus never understood. This wasn't just a business. It was a family. Maybe not by blood, but by bond. I'd built something real. Something worth protecting. He was about to learn that the hard way. I stopped seeing this as personal betrayal and started seeing it as a professional assault. And like any good businesswoman, I knew how to defend my territory. I didn't need to shout or scream. I didn't need to beg my daughter to come back. I needed a plan. A smart, strategic, airtight plan. One that would not only expose what Marcus was doing, but protect everyone he was about to hurt. I owed them that much. I owed myself that much. He thought I was some tired old lady ready to fade into the background. He had no idea who he was messing with. I didn't scream. I didn't storm into offices or threaten lawsuits, at least not yet. I went quiet, and I got smart. First, I went back to the paperwork. I spent 3 straight nights combing through every contract, every agreement, every signature tied to the business. I called in a favor from Marlene, an old friend and retired business attorney who once helped me navigate a trademark dispute 10 years ago. She came over with a box of red wine and reading glasses. "So you want to take down your son-in-law," she said, cracking her knuckles. "Let's see what we're working with." Within hours, we found the loophole that changed everything. When I had turned over day-to-day operations to my daughter, I never relinquished ownership of the intellectual property, brand trademarks, logo rights, recipe copyrights, and most importantly, the business name. Elaine's Cafe, LLC, still legally belonged to me and was held under my trust. Marcus had built his little knockoff empire using branding, recipes, and even slogans that were still legally mine. That gave me leverage. Next, I needed to get a clearer picture of how deep this went. I reached out to a forensic accountant, Michael, a meticulous genius I'd hired once during a franchise expansion. Within a week, he started building a case file that detailed Marcus's financial manipulations, overlapping accounts, misappropriated funds, funneling money from my business to his personal LLC without board approval. It was enough to raise eyebrows and cause legal problems, but that wasn't enough. I needed proof of intent. I needed something that showed this wasn't a sloppy business pivot. I needed to show this was theft. Premeditated, strategic theft. That's where Sophia came in. She still had admin access to internal communications. Marcus had foolishly assumed. No one was watching. He never revoked her access to company chat threads or emails. She started gathering everything. Screenshots, emails, messages between Marcus and his consultants. Even one where he joked that the staff wouldn't know what hit them once the old lady's brand was out of the picture. That one stung, but it was gold. I didn't just want revenge. I wanted exposure. I wanted the truth to shine so brightly that no PR spin could hide it. So I called in one more favor, From a local journalist, Tanya, who'd once featured my cafe in a Women in Business column years back. Marcus Taylor? She asked when I gave her the name. Isn't he the guy trying to revolutionize coffee spaces? He's been pitching himself to investors like crazy lately. I smiled. Then this is the perfect time to let the world know who he really is. She agreed, on one condition. Everything had to be verifiable. She wasn't running a smear campaign. She wanted receipts. And soon, thanks to Sophia and Michael, I had plenty. Meanwhile, I started quietly reaching out to our top vendors and letting them know I was still the legal owner of Elaine's Cafe, LLC. Most were shocked. Some had already signed new agreements with Marcus, without knowing he didn't actually own the rights to the brand. A few were angry. All were willing to listen. Then, I went one step further. I began drafting a cease and desist order with Marlene's help. The kind that would make Marcus's shiny new venture grind to a halt the second it launched. Trademarks, recipes, menu items, even the design elements, in his rebranded shops, mine, all of it. I didn't tell my daughter what I was doing. Not yet. I needed to be sure. I needed to be ready. But something in me shifted during this time. I wasn't just trying to save my business anymore. I was reclaiming my power. I had let love blind me, let trust override instinct. I wouldn't make that mistake again. Marcus thought he was playing chess, but I'd been building this board for 30 years, and I was about to checkmate the hell out of him. The moment I filed the cease and desist, the first domino fell. Marcus received the letter at his new flagship location, a cafe still under construction with big plans for a grand opening. According to Sophia, he laughed when he opened it. "She's desperate," he reportedly said. "She can't stop progress." But within 2 days, the laughter stopped. First, the vendors began pulling out. 3 of our biggest suppliers, Coffee Beans, Custom Packaging, and the signature pastry distributor, froze their contracts with Marcus's Future Brew brand after reviewing the ownership documents I sent. Once they realized he had no rights to the recipes or branding, they wanted nothing to do with his new venture. They called it a legal liability. Second, Tanya's article dropped. Front page of the Small Business Watch column. From family legacy to corporate betrayal, the real story behind Future Brew's founder. She laid it all out. The sudden shift in leadership, the conflict of interest, the financial red flags, and Marcus's pattern of silencing longtime staff. And the clincher? An email, signed by Marcus, referring to my daughter as the emotional link to be managed, and calling the original Elaine's brand a quaint stepping stone. The article went viral locally. The cafe's loyal customers were furious. The comments section exploded with support for me. Some even organized a Keep Elaine's Alive event at the Maple Street location, demanding the brand be preserved and Marcus be removed. But I wasn't finished. With Marlene's help, I filed for an injunction that temporarily froze Marcus's access to all digital assets tied to Elaine's Cafe, including customer data, vendor portals, and brand materials. He tried to argue his new company was separate, but the paper trail said otherwise. He'd built Future Brew on the bones of my business, and now those bones were being reclaimed. Sophia, bless her heart, helped behind the scenes. She coordinated with staff, reassured them, and made sure Marcus never saw what was coming until it hit. And hit it did. Within a week, he lost access to 3 key locations, buildings still under leases I co-signed. The landlords, informed of the legal disputes, decided not to renew or transfer the contracts until ownership was clarified. That was a polite way of saying, "We're not dealing with your mess, Marcus." Investors started backing out next. Tanya had tapped into her own network of business analysts who uncovered Marcus's attempt to raise funding for Future Brew under misleading claims, omitting his lack of ownership, inflating profits from Elaine's that weren't legally his, and using photos of my cafes to pitch to investors. That alone could have led to a lawsuit from the investors if I had chosen to press charges. And still, I hadn't even spoken to him. That came later. But first, I had one more card to play. Gathered the staff, past and present, for a private meeting. I stood in front of them, heart racing, and told them everything. The lies, the takeover, the plan to erase what we had built. And then I made them a promise. If we survive this, I said, I'll restructure this business so that none of us can be pushed out like this again. I'll create profit sharing. I'll put employees on the board. We'll make this something no one man can ever steal again. That's when the room erupted with applause. People were crying. One of the bakers came up and hugged me, whispering, "We thought you were gone. For good." Not a chance. That day, I felt something click inside me, not just strength, but clarity. I wasn't doing this out of vengeance anymore. I was doing it for all of us, for every person who'd ever been manipulated or pushed aside in the name of progress, for everyone who thought they had no voice in the room, and for my daughter, even if she didn't realize it yet. Because Marcus wasn't just going to lose his empire. He was going to face me, and I was ready. I didn't schedule a meeting. I didn't ask permission. I walked straight into the Future Brew headquarters, an overly sleek, sterile office space Marcus had leased to impress investors, and found him sitting behind a glass desk, pretending to be the king of a castle built on lies. His face went pale when he saw me. "Elaine," he said, standing up. I wasn't expecting..." I dropped a thick manila folder on his desk. "You should have expected this." He opened it. Contracts, emails, financial transfers, the cease and desist, the injunction, a printed copy of Tanya's article. His eyes darted back to mine. "This isn't what you think." "No?" I asked calmly. "Because what I think is that you married my daughter, learned my business, waited until I stepped back, and tried to steal everything I spent my life building. Am I warm?" His charm flickered. He moved to damage control. "Look, this is just a misunderstanding. Sophie and I, she believed in modernizing. We thought you were stepping away. We just wanted to grow what you started." "By wiping my name off the door?" I said, leaning in. "By calling me a liability in your emails? By referring to my daughter as a link to be managed?" He froze. That last one hit. "You think you're clever, Marcus. You think you're powerful because you dress the part, speak in buzzwords, and flash investor decks full of numbers. You stole. But here's the truth. You're a fraud, and now everyone sees it." He tried to bluster. "This is business, Elaine. People evolve. Brands evolve. Don't take it personally." I smiled, cold and quiet. "You made it personal. The moment you underestimated me." Then I handed him the final document. A letter from my lawyer notifying him of impending litigation if he continued to operate Future Brew using any element tied to Elaine's Cafe, including brand assets, recipes, supplier contracts, or location. Leases. "You have 7 days," I said. "Shut it down, or I'll sue you for everything you own, and win." He scoffed. "You think Sophie will side with you?" That's when the door opened. She walked in, slowly, clutching her phone. Eyes wide, face pale. She'd been listening from the hallway. "I already have," she said. Marcus turned to her. "Sophie, wait. You know your mother's... She's what?" She snapped. "Smart, right? Everything she's saying. It's all true. I saw the emails, the texts. You used me. You used us both." His facade crumbled. He reached for her. "We can fix this." "No," she said. "You can pack your things. You're done." It wasn't easy watching my daughter break down. There was betrayal on both sides of the glass. His, yes, but also the truth she had to face about her own role in it all. But she came to me that night, sobbing like she hadn't since she was little, and whispered, "I'm so sorry, Mom. I didn't see it." I wrapped my arms around her and held her close. "You weren't supposed to. He fooled all of us." In the weeks that followed, Marcus tried to salvage what he could, but the injunctions, the vendor withdrawals, and the bad press were a noose, tightening around his neck. He left town 3 months later. His investors sued him for fraud. As for me, I restructured Elaine's Cafe from the ground up. We became a cooperative, employee-owned, with profit sharing, and a board that included baristas and bakers alike. The community rallied behind us. Business boomed. We reopened locations that Marcus had tried to shutter. And Sophie? She didn't rejoin the company, at least not right away. She needed time to rebuild herself, away from Marcus's shadow. But we talked, every week. Healing isn't a light switch, it's a journey. But we were walking it together now. Sometimes I visit the Maple Street Cafe and sit at the old corner table. Yes, I brought it back. I watch the staff laugh, customers sip their coffee, the smell of cinnamon rolls in the air. I built this. With love, with sweat, and now, with justice. Marcus thought he was writing me out of my own story, but I took the pen back, and I made damn sure he'll never forget how it ended.